So guys, welcome to the GMI Safety Manual webinar. Before we start, let me introduce you our speaker today. Whatever, went too fast. Here we go. So it's Tino Van de Capelle. I'm sure most of you already know him, but in any case, he has over 30 years of experience in the process industry and is a senior functional safety expert and trainer under the ESIS program of TUV Rhineland. He has published many papers and run many seminars. Last year we ran together something like 15, 20 seminars and training, and therefore is very qualified. In fact, the functional safety expert in our industry. Before we start, I need to take a few moments to introduce GMI, who we are, what we do, and why we do it. Again, some of you guys might know us, but we have to do this. We are registering this webinar also, and it will be online later on our YouTube channel. So GMI is a safety company. We produce, design, engineer, manufacture safety components such as safety barriers, intrinsically safe and SIL certified devices, which are used in many automation packages, DCS, ESD, fire and gas, SCADA, and so on. And we are present in many industries, typically oil and gas and petrochemical, but also pharmaceutical, food and beverage, mining, and so on. We have over 40 years of experience. The company was founded in 1993, but we are also coming from a former Elcon instrument. We take pride in stating that we manufacture and design and engineer, of course, our product here in Italy. 100% of our product are manufactured in our state-of-the-art facility near Milan, Italy. On the other hand, we are a global player present in all the continent. I have some delay, on the control, and when I click once, then I click twice because it's not moving and it moves twice. But anyhow, here we are. So because we make safety product, we take special care on those products. At the end, a safer product is better for all of us, a safer world. Less accident means less problem to our society. So we use state-of-the-art technology. We have complete product traceability. We test 100% of our product, from the incoming components to the product that goes outdoor. And they are, if say 10 years from now you send us a serial number, we'll be able to tell you who tested, what was the test result, which component were installed from which batch, and able to trace back all the way. We use an highly automated manufacturing process here in Italy to keep the cost down. And of course, we are ROHS REACH compliant and compliant to every other rule that apply in our world today. And we have achieved functional safety management certification for SC3, so up to SIL3. So not only our product, but as Tino will later be able to explain to you, our process is SIL3 compliant. These are the products we manufacture. So IS barrier, safety relays, with and without line monitoring, isolators, SIL also certified, SIL up to SIL3 certified. We have power supplies rated for hazardous location and SIL3 certified power supply. If you guys never heard of it, we have them. We have multiplexers, temperature multiplexers, heart multiplexers. We also have a big line of termination panels designed to interface with the most common system out there. We have a line of SPD, so surge protection device, or as somebody asked the other day, they were called TVS. And I don't remember what that meant anymore. Loop indicators. And of course, we have a division that provides functional training and services with the support of Tino. It's basically on hold these days because of the COVID situation. By the way, let me take a moment to say, we are doing better here in Italy. And I don't know about Tino in Belgium. How are you guys doing there?
It's still depending from day to day. They have a small increase again, so.
But we know there are countries out there that are still in big troubles, like the US, Brazil, India, some Middle Eastern countries. So, you know, we hope for the best. We managed to come out of it. I'm sure everybody will be able to also. So our presence is global. We have subsidiaries around the globe in Dubai, Russia, Australia, US, and so on. We have many distributors. The list keeps growing. We cannot keep up with the presentation. And we are about 200 people, and we run many courses. We used to run many courses, functional safety courses for functional safety engineering courses. And we have thousands of installations around the globe. And we will get back to these courses very soon. Right, Tim? Let's hope so.
First confirmed are in September already.
Okay, so September we should be, even here in Italy now we are able to manage a course. We have a lot of regulations, you know, we have to wear masks, but we can still manage a course. So we'll do. We have a reference list, so we operate with most of the system vendors, from ABB to Yokogawa. We've done projects with many EPCs around the globe, and we supply our products to many OEMs. We're very proud of that because OEM application can be very rough. We have trucks, we have drilling rigs, we have skids. You know, they're installed in very rough conditions and with many OEMs. And of course, we are on the AVL of oil and gas company around the globe. Well, that was about our company presentation. I took only 10 minutes, Tino, to give you most of the time.
Good, thank you.
Guys, before he starts, I want to mention that you have posed some questions. Let me release my control here 1 second. Give up remote control. Okay, so you posed some questions in the registration process, and we will answer those after the presentation. We prepare some slides for it. There's also available a question and answer box there. You can use. I see somebody start using it. We'll try to get to your question as possible. You just keep using that question and answer box. Tino, it's all yours.
Thank you, Paolo. Thank you for the introduction, and also thank you for the opportunity that GMI is giving week after week for us to give some webinars and trying to give some of our know-how away over the web. Today's topic is called the Safety Manual. I already see some questions and answers, or at least questions coming in, so we will handle those a little bit later. Yeah. Let's first have a look at the topic for today. So the Safety Manual topic. I
will hide myself so that I'm not, you know, messing with your presentation, but I'm here.
Okay, right. So the Safety Manual, the topic Safety Manual itself, is a normative requirement from the IEC 61508. What does that mean? The IEC 61508 is a standard which is designed, or is the purpose of the standard is when a manufacturer of an electrical product or of a electronic component product or of a programmable electronical safety related product is trying to develop from a hardware and or from a software point of view, and they want to show complying to the standard, then what does the IEC 61508 require? That manufacturer, depending on the SIL level, he will have a independent assessment done. For a SIL 1, independent person, SIL 2, independent department, but for a SIL 3, an independent party. That means a different organization. But the key issue for today is not about the independent accreditation of a product. It's the normative requirement in general. If you have a SIL 1, 2, 3, or even a 4, a SIL 4 product, you shall provide a safety manual to prove to the end user or to the user of that device or component that your component is in compliant to the 61508 standard. And if you can see the first bullet, let me just try this. If you see here the first bullet over here, the supplier, read the manufacturer here, shall provide the safety manual, and they refer here to Annex D. And that Annex D is in a normative section of both Part 2, which is the hardware part, and also Part 3, which is the software part. That means in that Annex D section, they will describe the purpose, what needs to be described in there, the content, the justification of claims, and that is the most important item to look for when you try to understand how does a manufacturer claim that his or her device comply to the SIL level which they would put in their specifications. Note that every compliant product as of April 2010 shall provide you with a safety manual. Otherwise, simply speaking, the product is not in compliance to the IEC 61508. And for those who are not so familiar with that, edition 2 was released in 2010 April. And in April 2010, it was a normative requirement to have the safety manual. That means any product supplier out there that is releasing the product after the date of April 2010 has no other choice to provide you also with a safety manual. That's the first slide. Now my second slide. What is now the content? And we will come back on the registration questions. And we had many questions about that topic, which I show over here. What is now the content of a safety manual? I will try to give you a few items without going too much in depth because we don't want to spend a couple of hours on here. But I would like to give you like a summary. Okay, and the first bullet is, in the safety manual, the manufacturer, who is supposed to be the specialist of the functionality of that safety device, shall describe to you as an end user or as an instrument engineer or design engineer, shall describe in the safety manual what is the function being performed. And I'll give you a simple example. Safety relay from GMI, a SIL safety relay with a normally closed contact. That means the contact needs to close in order to achieve safety. So that functionality needs to be explained. Typically, it will be a normally open contact. That means you will remove the load. You will de-energize to trip your safety functionality. That means that that functionality needs to be described inside that relay, what is going on. Now, if you think about that, if you are using a safety PLC, which most of you are using from whatever brand or vendor you have selected, the vendor of that safety PLC does not know what functionality or what application program you will program to connect the inputs with the output. And that is why today's topic of the webinar, the safety manual of the manufacturer, is not the same as the functional safety manual, which is now a normative requirement from the 61511. And after all these years of teaching classes around the world, I thought I want to make a webinar for once and for all to clearly distinction between safety manual from the 61508 and between the functional safety manual from the 61511, because many people have never heard about that. And that's why we are doing this here today. Second bullet, inside the safety manual from the manufacturer, they will tell you exactly what hardware and or software, if there is firmware inside the safety functionality, what type of configuration and what type of revision actually is being used in that particular safety function. The constraints and or assumption on it used. Well, the constraints, they may have some environment constraints, they may have some, maybe some power constraints. Whatever could be the constraints needs to be specified in here. Assumptions on his use. Well, the manufacturer assumes that you will use his particular product in a certain fashion. Give you a simple example. Some people think they never have to read an instruction manual because they have been an engineer for 30 years and they know how to install maybe a barrier or a relay or something. But then when you look at the cooling ducts of one of those devices, and then you see that they put them all in a horizontal fashion over a DIN rail, then they're actually wondering why some of the top components are starting to fail quicker than some of the bottom components. Those are simple examples that needs to be explained also, assumptions on its use. For every single function, they have to tell you more, and I call this in a nutshell, more about the internal kitchen. An internal kitchen means The cook, which is here the vendor or the manufacturer, they can actually bring you a wonderful menu, okay? And they can bring you a wonderful safety functionality. But in the safety manual, there are some more items to be highlighted, such as what is the internal hardware fault tolerance? In other words, how many dangerous faults can you tolerate and still achieve safety? What are your failure rates? Because you may need those if you want to try to calculate or if you try to predict how available your system will be. The information about diagnostic coverage, the information about the proof test coverage, etc. And here I see systematic capability, and I just watched on the Q&A, there was one question coming online. What do you mean that your process is SIL 3 certified? Well, the process of the manufacturer, the development, the quality, the rigorousness of the design for the quality of the hardware and or the software needs to be measured to find out how good have the manufacturer used the tables from the 61508 part 7, and they have a table for a SIL 1, a SIL 2, a SIL 3, and even for a SIL 4. And if you fulfill all those measurements, the accreditation officer may accredit you with an SC, systematic capability, equal to 3, and that is what Paulo was referring to in the beginning of the introduction. Second part of the content of the safety manual, and now diving into the firmware or into the software environment. That means on a normal safety relay where there is no software or firmware on the PCB board or on the printed circuit board, then they don't have to follow, of course, this part 3. But if you look in a smart or a hard transmitter, which is driven by firmware operating system, that means they also have to fulfill in their safety manuals all those topics which you see over here. The safety functionality integrity, that means again what functions are being performed, what are the constraints, show us evidence on how this can be proven. The attributes of an element that shall be defined by an integrator that he needs to consider during the applications for hardware and for software for combined safety functions, configuration, revisions, backward compatibilities, etc., etc. Simply, again, I can go a lot more in depth about all those, but a webinar is not a training. A webinar is to make you aware of something, and that is the purpose here of this slide. Right, Paulo.
Tino.
We have the first poll question coming in.
First poll question. So I may launch this poll. Here we go. So the question we have for you guys to see if you've been listening to us is a manufacturer of a safety product that is compliant to IEC 61508 shall provide third-party certification, safety manual explaining that a product is per IEC 61508, or a SIL certificate plus a test report, or all of the above. Well, it can be a little confusing. You made the question kind of like a driver license test. You know, they are the tricky questions.
We are used to give exam to people, so we know what the tricky questions can be looking like. And this is one of the tricky questions. And yeah. I'm just reading the question myself again. And during the explanation, I think maybe some people will be confused. And that's also what you see in the answers. We give a bit more time about the answers. But the good news is that until now, no one has been picking answer A.
Yeah, and this is a good news.
That is a good news.
You would think otherwise.
So finally, we are trying to break the ice here, but that poll question was maybe in previous webinars also, some of the favorite questions.
No, you know, because typically, you know, you get to a customer and they ask, give me your certification, and that's all they want.
Yeah, I see that someone is raising his hand. Can you please put your question in the Q&A, because we're not taking any microphones online from participants.
Let me see, and the polling, yes, let's send the poll, share the result.
Which is the good news.
Yeah, every question you guys have, use the Q&A box. Is the only way you can talk to us today.
Now, so the answers are coming in that 56% took answer B, which is, by the way, the only correct answer, because the 61508 standard does not require a certificate. And I was thinking about when I mentioned it in my previous slide, I was saying for the SIL 3, the standard requires an independent organization to make an assessment. They don't say that that assessment needs to issue a certificate. So a certificate itself is not required. So A is out. B was 56%, which is good. Then a SIL certificate plus a test report or certificate. No one took this answer also. That's question C. And then also D, all of the above or none of the above. Of course, that's not correct. So certainly those.
You guys did pretty good anyhow. Stop share. And it was a little tricky question. So we have no open questions. We can continue to Tino.
All right, let me just close.
You've been doing great, and you know you are right about safety manual. I think you might need to take a little more time to explain about the difference about a functional safety manual and the safety manual the manufacturer provides.
It's coming. It's coming, and this is the reason for this webinar, because this is here a classical example. Here we see a safety manual of a SIL 3, normally closed contact relay from normally energized from a GMI product. Okay, so the GMI safety manual. Yeah. And here, without going too much in detail, simply speaking, when you take that manual should be able to explain you how to install the device. Well, you can say, well, look, it looks like a dinner mounted device, so it will be not that difficult. And if I'm an engineer, I may seek for a, let's say, a diagram, electrical diagram, maybe on the box. I don't have to read the manual. I would say I would still open the manual. Maybe there are some items in there that you are not aware of yet. So how to install it, how to operate it. Well, now for a safety relay, I think the operation of safety relay is pretty straightforward, but still you may have to read this. How to maintain it. I mean, there must be some maintenance on every single product. Oops, let's go back. On every single product, you have a useful life. That means the product will survive for 20, 25, 30 years, whatever it is now.
30 years a long time.
These days with those type of components. But that means you may have to do some kind of a testing to prove for yourself that the safety function of that particular device is still working as per design requirement. That means the proof test. And in the GMI safety manuals, you will see the proof test coverages. They will tell you if you do, for instance, test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can claim up to 30 or 40% of proof test coverage. If you do the additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 test, you may claim up to maybe 90, 95, maybe 99% proof test coverage. So every single safety device in their safety manual shall explain to you how can you prove the functionality is still working as per design. The failure rates needs to be in there also, because you will need them again to do your SIL verification. That means you will have to have that number coming out of there. And of course also here, which I already mentioned, the useful life. And I made it very simple for myself. I said, etc. There are many more items. If you go back to the previous slides, which you...
For example, Tino, you have, special condition of use. If the relay or the device has been certified only in certain condition, it will have to be stated. If the safety function, for example, this relay has many different safety functions that it can achieve depending on how you connect it and so on. So each one has to be specific, clearly marked and identified. What's important to understand is a mandatory document. If you don't get that, then you're not getting a compliant
and people
product.
need to read it. I mean, it's a mandatory document that most people keep in their product documentation or project documentation, somewhere stacked away, but they never use it. And that's why we're going to have now the next topic. And that's what Paulo was asking.
It's a fact, we say when everything else fails, read the manual. Last night I was trying to, some customer called me, it was night for me, about it doesn't work. In reality, there was just a tip switch setting, change it from sync to source. I mean, just read the manual, It's easy to call somebody.
The first thing the engineers do now is Google, and then they start to believe Google. And when Google doesn't solve it, then they will start to seek some more help. Anyway, the second topic for today, which is actually very close to the first topic, is called Functional Safety Manual. And you can say, well, it's still called Safety Manual. Yes and no. It's called Functional Safety Manual. So the word functional is very important to highlight. And that's why I have here in the last bullet, the definition of Functional Safety Manual is coming from the IEC 61511. And for those of you who do not know what the IEC 61511 is, well, that's also a functional safety standard, which is not meant to be used by the manufacturers. This is an application dedicated standard for the process industry, enabled to build, to design, to operate and to maintain a safety instrumented system, or a SIS. So in a nutshell, it's a function safety standard for a safety instrumented system in the process industry. And process industry is still today the oil and gas, chemicals, petrochemicals. New by 2016 edition 2 release is also pharmaceutical and is food and beverage. Now, normative requirement and the standard came up in edition 2, which was released in February 2016. And they say the following statement: the functional safety manual shall provide information that defines how a SIS device, how a SIS subsystem, or how a SIS as an overall system can be safely applied. And especially here, a system. A manufacturer never knows how his device will be configured in combination with other manufacturers, brands, devices, etc. That means the functionality of the SIS system can only be found back overall in a functional safety manual and not in the safety manual. The safety manual is dedicated to the subsystem maximum, whereas the functional safety manual is on the system level. The safety manual, and they call it here safety manual, but I would call it functional safety manual, may include inputs from the manufacturers as well as from the users. That means that inside the functional safety manual, you will of course use the data coming from the safety manual from the 61508, but you may have additional some other items in there because, as I said, the manufacturer will not know how you want to program maybe his safety PLC. For the IEC 61508 compliant devices, the manufacturer's input is the safety manual itself, as I just mentioned. This could be generic standalone document or a collection of documents. I will not go too much in depth or deep here on this last bullet, as this came in the registration question, and I will handle this on a separate Q&A. Right, what is now the purpose of this, as I already told you? Well, simply speaking, the functional safety manual is there to help the engineer, the end user, or the operating company to ensure that the systematic safety integrity is maintained for the target SIL. What is systematic safety integrity of a SIL level of a safety function? Basically speaking, this functional safety manual should help the engineers, the people, to make less human mistakes, because that manual shall explain exactly what is supposed to be carried out as a safety function. This is in fact a customized document that of course will heavily depend on what information is available on every single subsystem, on the functionality of the subsystem, per your SIF or your safety instrumented function in your entire SIS. A small recommendation, as I have seen in some of the projects we were involved, recommendations to identify typical loop configuration. You may have one of one, one of two, two out of three loop configuration. So you may have some typicals already in your SIF design. And maybe you're going to use for those type of loops, you're going to use all the same vendor revision hardware / software devices or subsystems. So that could be a very nice help if you would be able to do that. Nevertheless, as I said, when identical typicals are used, very often we see that the loop may have different modular revision constraint devices applicable. And then again, it becomes mess. So then you will have to go item per item per item. It will be all a different description as you are using different devices. And I took here the picture out of one of the training courses we are doing, and I without having any brand in here, of course, those are GMI material. The challenges will be that every single subsystem can have, and I give you a few of the challenges, means the struggle blocks, which you may struggle with. The proof test requirements of all those you see on the picture, most likely will all be different. For the entire SIF from end to end, you may say, for instance, every 18 months or every 6 months or whatever, I will have to test. But if you go here in the middle, maybe that beauty over here maybe only needs to be tested every 10 years, every 15 years. There are even some vendors now every 20 years. And now some of the newer components of GMI, it's every 20 years, they recommend you to do a kind of a proof test. I doubt you would wait 20 years to test one of those over here. So what I'm saying is all those will all have individual different recommendations from the manufacturer on how to do and how frequent to do the proof test. The mission time of your entire SIF is hopefully shorter than the shortest useful lifetime. I give an example. Assume that my loop here needs to have a mission time of 5 years. And I look here at the end, and there the useful life of one of the components or one of the subsystems is maybe 3 years. Well, then you know that after 3 years, potentially one of your subsystems will not work as per design, so you will have to refurbish that. So those are kind of items that you may struggle with. The model numbers, revisions, the hardware revisions, the firmware revisions. How many end users or operating companies are listening in today? And if you would think about your application, your plant, how many of you would know exactly today what firmware is inside your measuring devices? And you may say, well, it's all the same color, Tino, it's all the same model number, which typically is the first answer they will give you. I said, fine. What is the firmware? Are they all the same? And if not, what is the difference? What is the influence on your safety function? Those are kind of items that you will have to be aware of. Right. Now, I made an attempt, and I'm saying I made an attempt to show you the content purpose, but as I was starting to cut, copy, paste this all as bullets in here, I was thinking like, you know, you can spend hours in here or days in here to explain. So I will pick up a few, okay? So the brief description of the schematics itself of what the safety function for a instrument engineer, as I'm still an instrument engineer from in the early days, well, that's the first thing we will look for. How is this loop configured, and what is the purpose of this loop in terms of safety function? Of course, I would like to know the revision numbers, etc., etc. Then I'm just looking here, that's the AP, stands for the application program. What is the operational description, including what is my safe state and what is my fail-safe operation? That means if it fails, how will my safety function be executed? That is something that needs to be described also here in your functional safety manual. Of course, the manufacturer recommendations, instructions, etc. The failure modes, reliability analysis, because we will need to know the useful life, we need the repair times, because the MTTR is the mean time to restoration, no longer the mean time to repair. We have another webinar where we talk more about that. Measures that are taken to avoid and control systematic failures, including software failures, if applicable, common cause failures. Those are all kind of items that we need to see in the functional safety manual. Right, Paolo?
All right, so here is another poll that Tino prepared for us. Let me launch it. The question is quite long, but the simple answer: a project needs to comply to the IEC 61511 standard and is using only IEC 61508 compliant device. Then what? Per device, the safety manual is required. A functional safety manual is required on a SIF level. Both are required, none of the above. Tino, why, our guest, our participant on answering, I want to ask you a question. What if you have devices that are certified for IEC 61511? Because this is also true today. You can have components that are certified 61508, but sometimes they can also be certified 61511.
Correct.
It's the same?
In some of the test reports, in some of the certificates that you may come across, the initial standard will be 61508, and then some of the vendors also listing what application standards compliance do they have. Now, almost automatically, if your device is in compliance with the 61508, then you can use this also inside the 61511, because the 61511 is using all the same, let's say, definitions and framework of the 61508. So when you read this question here very carefully, you need to build a project, and the project requirements is to comply to the IEC 61511. And you are lucky because you can use only 61508 compliant devices. That means your devices you're going to use are already 61508, let's say, compliant.
Or well, certified is not the right word.
Certified is not the right word. That is why I did not use the word certified. I'm saying they are compliant. Okay, so
most of you guys have answered. Let's hand polling. Don't be shy and answer. We're not going to vote you anyhow. Hand poll. Share this result. So, what was the right answer, Tino?
The right answer is the one that has the majority, so people are listening carefully, so it's good. We have both of the above, A and B, because as it is compliant to 61508, you shall have a safety manual from the manufacturer, and as you need to comply to the 61511, you shall provide a functional safety manual. So A and B is the majority. Only a functional safety manual is required. Well, as you have a 61508 compliant device, you shall have also the safety manual of or per device. So it's both A and B. None of you took none of the above, which is good. So the majority here, let's say I got 2/3 of the complete group has this correct. So this is a good news.
Good news.
Right.
We have some questions, but I think we can put them at the end.
Yeah, I saw one coming in, which is a good question. Okay, so summary. Today, we talked about the safety manual that's on the left-hand side for the manufacturers, which is a normative requirement. They shall provide you that. That's mandatory, as I said over here. And what is my recommendation? Use this valuable information as a reference and as an input during your design, during your operations, and during your maintenance activities for that specific product or that specific device. Enable to prove, it's all about proving evidence, that you are meeting the functional safety requirements as per design. That is here what the safety manual will help you with, and that's normative. Versus the functional safety manual, which is new since 2016/2017. The reason I have a second date on that is because we had a corrigendum amendment out. Amendment was out in August 2017. That's why the correct date of release of the consolidated version of the 61511 edition 2 is now August 2017. That's why we have 2 dates. Whatever is the reason for those 2 dates. What is the bullet? What is normative? A functional safety manual is mandatory for every compliant SIS design to the edition 2 of the standard. That means any one of you since 2017 in this type of business, believing you have delivered a compliant project without a functional safety manual, you may be lucky that your inspector has not picked you up yet, because that is the first thing they will ask you. Show us the functional safety manual of this system we are trying to make an assessment for. And assessments by memory, I think next week, I think it's next week, Paolo, we are doing a webinar
on functional safety assessment. Yeah, I believe so. I will check while you continue.
I think it is. So what is my recommendation? Every single safety instrumented function, detailed instruction in the functional safety manual will help the operations and the maintenance engineers to maintain the functional safety functionality requirements and to avoid making systematic, between brackets, human errors. So I hope now you see the difference. The safety manual is per device. The functional safety manual is mainly on the complete SIS system functionality. Right, in closing, of course, we are there to help. As GMI, we are providing, besides training, we're also providing services. So we are doing the entire life cycle support, which is from PHRA all the way down to LOPA determination, verification, SRS, functional safety assessments, and also management. We also provide you with a different type of, let's say different type. It's a extended group helping the functional safety group is on lifecycle support for the 62443, which is the industrial security management and assessment and supplier security management. And as Paolo was mentioning on one of the slides you have seen as the introduction, we have done last year 18 trainings. Unfortunately, this year, I don't think we're going to reach 18. I think I'm going to be happy if I reach 8 or 10 trainings, because that means after the summer, we can really go full steam ahead, but let's just wait and see. So the main occupation from myself is clearly teaching that training over here, which is the competency review from TOV Rhineland. I was one of the initial trainers from the very first days of the program. And some of you that I've seen on the list have been trained by me. You may remember the story. Out of the 4 initial trainers, I'm the only one alive and kicking, or in other words, still active. One unfortunately passed away, the other one retired, and the third one, he quit. So I got 3 options, but I will not select any of those 3 yet. I want to on training. Fundamentals of Cybersecurity is another training program together with the security risk assessment. All of above trainings are subject to passing an exam and to give you a personal certificate to prove you are competent in one of those standards. Of course, we do customized in-house trainings and seminars, and we have more free webinars to follow.
Yeah, and it's on the 23rd, this webinar on functional safety management, right?
This is next week, right?
And Ottino, also you might mention that if, you know, we mentioned last time, and we had a question live about if the training might go online. We know it not yet, but
yes, I got this question. I saw this question coming in, but you took it away. So can we provide the TOV a Rhineland Functional Safety Engineer training virtual? The answer is yes, but we still today are not allowed to provide you the exam test of that same training. So the concept was, when we discussed this in the committee of the TOV Rhineland Training Committee, we all discussed and said, we are allowed to do virtual training, but we need to postpone the exam to a later date that people are allowed to come in and to do the exam. And as you know, if I would train you today and you write your exam in 2 months, the chances you will pass the exam is very low. So therefore, we are in a kind of a discussion for the moment to seek for some alternatives, that we would work with some, let's say, local training exam centers monitored and controlled by TOV Rhineland, but that has not been decided yet.
So we will let you know, guys, if things change and we are able to do an online training.
Correct.
But so far, not yet. So we keep watching these webinars and you'll be ready for the training. Okay, well, you finished and we got some question and answer because we've already 45 minutes.
All right, Paolo, I will stop sharing and you can take over.
Well, there are some, I will take the question and answer box. In the meantime, you might want to answer some of these online questions, which make a lot of sense. For example, if it's enough to have a safety manual. The second one there sounds like
I pick one question. I pick one question over here. Is the SRS enough as the functional safety manual? This with support from a safety life cycle, safety management plan, and safety manual. Well, at least the SRS is certainly one of the key documents as an input for the functional safety manual, because your SRS should describe how your SIS has been configured and has been programmed, or what is the functionality. So some of the items, I fully agree with this person asking the question, is overlapping. That means in your SRS, you will have a kind of a detailed description that may serve as the input for your functional safety manual. Now, one more question. Is it logical to have the functional safety manual just for component, example giving only for the logic solver of a SIF, or it has to be done for a complete SIF only? Well, whatever we have as a manual that is helping us to understand how the into outputs are configured, again, that should be described, to my humble opinion, not in your functional safety manual. That should be found back in your application program safety requirement specification. And the safety manual of that safety PLC or logic solver, it says logic server, but I think you meant logic solver. Well, the logic solver itself, they may describe the functionality of their IO cards, of their CPU cards, of their COM boards, etc. But the programming itself, the logic between in to out, that needs to be found back in your application program safety requirement specification. Right, and one more quick one from a person that I also know the name. Safety validation plan, is that the same as the functional safety manual? I don't think so. Of course, it depends on how do you see a safety validation plan. A validation is typically during the acceptance for either FAT, factory acceptance test, or site acceptance test. And your safety validation plan, if that is the plan that I have in mind on a specific project, That would be to validate that the safety has been achieved according to your requirements. Now, your functional safety manual could have some input to your validation plan. So you can see there is a very close synergy between all those different types, but just answering the title of safety validation plan as such, it depends what validation plan you are meaning. Yes, Paolo.
Okay, so let's answer some of the questions we received online that were pertinent to our webinar. The first one is, hopefully you can see it, right?
Yes, I can see it, and I can
okay,
also...
it's a long question. Could you please comment safety manual definition 3271 as per IC 61511 2016, note 3. This could be a generic standalone document or a collection of documents. Do you see an improvement to this approach?
Okay. That's a very valid question. I also know the person is one of my ex-students. I mean, a previous student from one of the classes. Now, as you were asking, you were referring to a definition, and the definition has some notes. Note in a definition is not normative. So note 3 is just a informative information. Nevertheless, I'm trying to be open here, and I'm trying to say what I'm thinking about note 3, which is not normative. And I said the functional safety manual, and actually that was the bullet which we had in my slides where I said I'm going to skip this, I'm going to explain it here, and that is now the question. The functional safety manual requirements for a compliant project to the 6.15.11 edition 2 can be indeed a standalone document. From one point of view, a standalone one document is a lot easier to maintain than, for instance, 37 documents all linked together. Because with 37 documents, you may have a lot of different revisions. It's going to be a mess to maintain that. Whereas when you only have one document, it could also be a problem. That is what I'm saying over here. The disadvantage is, of course, with one document for an entire SIS, that document will be continuously exposed to potential modification/revision. So it will be almost like a live document. I give an example. If you have a safety instrumented system for a process unit, and the unit has maybe different trains in there or production trains in there, and you are making some modification on one of the trains for whatever reason, well, you may have to modify your complete functional safety manual. So on one hand,
a live document or not? Because we have this question also.
Yeah. So this one document here, this one document can have, of course, the benefit. It's a lot easier to maintain. On the other hand, it's a lot more difficult to maintain because it is always exposed to potential modification revision. And as Paolo was saying, we have, is functional safety manual a live document? Who should prepare and maintain the manual? Well, maintain the manual. Who do you think needs to maintain the manual? It's going to be the end user, right? It's going to be the operating company end user. Who has to prepare it? That is a question again, of course, of who will pay for it, right? So I would say, who can prepare this? The competent person with the knowledge available that he needs to have to produce this document. And that can be, or a external, maybe company consultant, that can be maybe the EPC contractor, a department that has the know-how, etc. So I'm not saying who has to do it. It is more who has to maintain it. It is certainly the end user. The second bullet, as I said, on the other hand, if you would have multiple documents, I go back to my example, one SIS, one production unit with different production trains in there. Now, if you would have per train a dedicated functional safety manual, well, then it's going to be easier to maintain per train the revisions if you only make on one train for whatever reason a modification and not on the other ones. So it's like a catch-22, or you take one, but then it's continuously being exposed, or you take a separation per segments or per units, and then of course it's going to be a lot easier. Yes, Paolo.
Well, I guess what is important is to keep it up to date. So if you're making changes, you need to update your safety manual, functional safety manual. Okay, let's see next question. Wow, that was 3 questions in 1 question. Please summarize key elements of the safety manual which are important to SIF. What are the parts we should mention on a safety manual? What are the main items should be included in the safety manual? Part of it you had discussed already in the presentation, so maybe we have a recap here.
But I thought as three individual different persons from different countries are asking the same topic question, that means a lot of people are not reading the IEC 61508 standard, because the list you see over here is coming from the 61508. We're not just making things up, right?
Yeah.
We need to use reference documents. And what I'm saying you here is that is the content. So anyone that asked the question.
In our function, in our SIL book, which we had a webinar last week, we have a chapter on safety manual, correct?
That needs to be revised, Paulo.
It needs to be revised. So, okay, it's a work we have to do.
We do have a safety manual section in there, which is the last section. I think it's it's chapter 9. But it needs to be revised to the edition 2 of the 61508. And my intention was also to think about to write an additional functional safety manual
chapter.
On that.
That would be very good, Tino. All right, so recap.
We can continue, Paulo, because we have given that also in the other slide.
Okay. So 61511 is wrap around the 16508. Then why are they different from each other? Well, they're very different from the way I see it. Why are they different?
Yeah, well, the initial intention is different. The 61508, which is the first one over here, and I just took the title of the standard, they're saying if you want to achieve functional safety of something electrical, something electronic, or something programmable, safety-related systems, well, that is mainly for the product suppliers / manufacturers. Regardless where that device, EEPES, will go. That means that can go in nuclear, that can go in aviation, that can go in the automobile sector, that can go in the process industry. Of course, GMI is in the process industry. They are not supplying for a automobile sector a sensor in the car. But I can tell you the biggest application coverage around the world of functional safety is in the automobile sector now.
Yeah,
because
our
modern cars are more and more having intelligency and items in there which are all being designed initially on the 61508. So 61508, as a summary, has a normative requirement for a safety manual of that compliant device. Whereas the 61511, I would not call the 61511 a wraparound. Certainly not, because they are different. The 61511, although they use also SIL 1, 2, 3, 4, that's probably the only thing they have in common. They also have a life cycle, but the life cycle is also different. So they have a lot of items in common in terms of terminology, but the concept is different. The main item for the 61511 is to achieve functional safety, building an SIS, maintaining an SIS, or operating an SIS in the process industry sector. That means there's a dedicated standard which is not to be used for nuclear or automobile sector or whatever. It's only for the process industry. So what I'm saying here is this is not for the manufacturers. This is mainly for the operating companies, the end users, the system integrators, the service providers, engineering companies, etc. All of which are active in some of the process industry life cycle activities, being oil and gas, chemical, petrochemical, food and beverage, and pharmaceutical. What is now the summary on the 61511? What is now a normative requirement related to our webinar? Well, there you need to provide a functional safety
manual. All right, Tino. So very clear. So what next question was interested to know the difference between normative reference and product safety manual.
That's a bit of a tricky question. I mean, it's always if you read the question, you can answer it in different ways. So when I read it the first time, I had a different answer, and I thought, like, maybe that's not what this person. So if this person is listening, you're very welcome to add in the Q&A box some additional questions. But I would say normative reference for every 61508. What is normative? What is now mandatory to supply? As you already can imagine, it's that safety manual. And that's the definition of safety manual, comes from the standard. And I'm referring here to the definitions part, which is part 4. And that's the exact definition 3.8.17, saying the definition of a safety manual is purely coming from that 61508 standard. Now, product safety manual, specific product safety manual, that could be, as a title, could be from a specific vendor, from a specific brand. And please note, I've seen in the past some manufacturers, they are combining documents. They call it instruction/safety manual.
We do that sometime.
I know, but some other vendors also. But I'm saying here, instruction manuals is not a normative reference, let's say definition from a standard. Only the safety manual is, and that's all I can actually help you with here. Yes, Paolo. I think we are.
No, sorry. Let's move on. Okay, so this is, well, I lost control. I got too many open windows. So okay, well, okay. So that was the last one. I put here this slide, I think, in the wrong spot, right?
Correct.
So can you please arrange a similar session for? So I have a reverse. Okay. So every time you guys register, you ask and pose questions that are not related to the webinar, but they say, can we know about safety relay? Can we know about functional safety management? Can we know about life cycle? Can we know about application on Zinaberi? So to answer that, we have many live webinars. You come on, just log on and, you know, follow those. And that's it. I put that twice. So we are at the end of our presentation. Well, there is a question, Paul. Yeah, there is a question, Tino. It's not really related to our. While I launched the poll, maybe you can answer this question. You can look it up in the question and answer box. It's not really. Okay. It's about mission time, design life.
I see that. Yeah. Okay. Hello. Please help clarify the difference between the useful lifetime, the mission time, and design life specified in the safety manuals. I have observed them in safety manuals of valve bodies, of actuated valves, and the mission time is usually very low. Example giving 10 years. What does that mean? Well, that's actually quite a detailed question that of course needs some detailed answer as well, where I'm thinking
we might be able to answer back via email as we did with some of our. I would not answer
it here live, so I would propose that this person, when you see my contact details, you can send me an email and I can
close the presentation with the contact details.
Yeah, I know.
So, okay, well, let me give you 1 second. I share this contact detail once again. And then we can go to share the result. I think most of you guys are thinking we're doing great. So where is it? Where is our presentation? Share. What do you guys see? See the right slide? Closing. Here they are, right?
It's a bit different. You are sharing your complete screen, but it's still fine. The purpose is there, so we can see the final slide.
Well, let's do like this.
It's okay, Paolo. It's okay.
Now you see it.
More or less.
More or less. Stop. Share result. Close. Well, today is a little bit confused. I got up late and everything was running late today. Okay, so you see our contact details here, right?
Correct.
So you guys write to us if you have any more questions. If we cannot get to your question, we'll be online. You can look it up online on our website, and you'll be able to see the next webinars, which, as I said, it's on the 23rd.
On functional safety, yeah.
On functional safety, but we have other webinars before that. So, okay, Tino, thank you. Thank you again for your knowledge. Thank you for sharing that with us and with our guests. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You all keep it safe and keep it healthy.
Yeah, we'll try to do that. You are in control, so you can keep going or shut it down. I cannot do anything.
I like to be in control. Okay, well, I will close the session. Thank you, everyone. You take care, and we see you soon again on one of the next webinars for GMI. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.